In the shadows of American history, the Central Intelligence Agency has operated hundreds of secret projects. Most were never meant to see the light of day, their details buried in classified files and redacted reports. But one project went too far, so far, in fact, that even the CIA itself was forced to shut it down. To understand why this happened, we have to go back to the Cold War, a time when fear was a weapon and paranoia guided the hand of the powerful. The world was split into a tense standoff between superpowers. In Washington, a terrifying belief began to take hold that America's enemies, particularly the Soviet Union and China, had unlocked the secrets of the human mind. They weren't just developing new bombs and jets, they were developing new ways to wage war. Invisibly, the whispers in the intelligence community grew louder. They spoke of mind control, of psychological weapons capable of turning a loyal soldier into a traitor or an enemy agent into an unwitting pawn. They feared techniques that could systematically break a person's will, extracting secrets and shattering human resistance. The thought of a Manchurian candidate, a brainwashed assassin, operating on American soil wasn't just movie fiction, it was a plausible threat that kept spies and generals awake at night. The CIA, a young and ambitious agency at the time, was gripped by a single, overriding fear: falling behind. If the Soviets already had these capabilities, America was dangerously vulnerable. Action was needed, and it was needed immediately. In this climate of urgency, a new project was approved. It was given a green light with few questions asked and even fewer limits imposed. A hand signed a classified document, setting in motion a chain of events with devastating consequences. The project was given a code name, a simple, almost meaningless identifier to mask its true purpose. Only a handful of high-ranking officials knew the full, terrifying scope of what was being planned. Even Congress, the body meant to oversee the nation's intelligence apparatus, was kept in the dark, given only vague, sanitized briefings, if any at all. The American public, of course, knew absolutely nothing. They went about their daily lives, completely unaware of the bizarre and dangerous experiments being funded by their own government. Within the confines of this top-secret program, ethics were not a priority. They were seen as an obstacle, a bureaucratic hurdle to be sidestepped. The mission was clear: get results, no matter the cost. The human mind itself became the new battlefield, a frontier to be explored, conquered, and controlled. Scientists and doctors were recruited, some brilliant, others reckless, all driven by the promise of unlimited resources and the patriotic call to protect the nation. They were told that the consequences of their actions were secondary to the discoveries they might make. This wasn't just a theoretical exercise or a strategic war game. It was an active, funded, and operational CIA program. Labs were set up in secure locations, universities, hospitals, and even secret prisons. The experiments began, and almost immediately, the project started to spiral out of control. The search for a weapon to defeat the enemy had begun to turn inward, targeting the very minds it was meant to protect. And the darkest chapter was yet to come. Follow me as we uncover the truth behind Project MKUltra. Thanks for watching. The project's ultimate goal was chillingly simple: total control over human behavior. Imagine a person reduced to a puppet, their strings pulled by an unseen hand. The first step was to break their resistance, to shatter their sense of self until their reflection was just a fractured image. From there, the objective was to rewrite their memories, erasing entire sections of their mind, leaving a blank slate for new programming. To achieve this, drugs became the primary tool. Tables were lined with vials and syringes, a chemical arsenal ready for deployment. Powerful hallucinogens were frequently used, capable of distorting reality until the subject could no longer distinguish between what was real and what was manufactured. Many of these substances were highly experimental, their effects on the human psyche largely unknown. Scientists scribbled complex chemical formulas, pushing the boundaries of pharmacology. Others were already known to be incredibly dangerous, their containers marked with hazard symbols that were blatantly ignored. The line between scientific inquiry and reckless endangerment had already been blurred. The most disturbing aspect of all was the recruitment of test subjects. They were not always volunteers, fully aware of the risks. In fact, many had no idea they were part of an experiment at all. A simple cup of coffee on a desk could be the delivery mechanism for a powerful psychoactive compound. They were dosed without their knowledge, without their consent, their autonomy stolen with a single, invisible drop. From hidden rooms, behind one-way glass, the researchers watched. Through the cold lens of a surveillance camera, they monitored every detail, observing as their subjects' behavior began to change. Some would clutch their heads in agony, others would stare blankly into space, their minds adrift in a chemical storm. The psychological toll was immense. People broke down completely, retreating into the corners of their minds, unable to cope with the induced chaos. Tragically, some never fully recovered. An empty hospital bed became a silent testament to a life permanently altered, a mind that could not be put back together. Within the project's ranks, flickers of conscience emerged. Some of the doctors and scientists involved began to raise serious concerns about the ethics and the human cost of their work. They hesitated before administering a dose, their hands trembling slightly, but these concerns were swiftly and systematically ignored. Files detailing their objections were stamped with a single, dismissive word: dismissed. The machine had no room for dissent. It only cared about results, and so the data kept flowing. Charts and graphs filled the walls, tracking the descent of each subject. The experiments didn't just continue, they escalated. The project leaders demanded more. This meant longer exposure times to the drugs, with clocks seeming to spin faster and faster as subjects were kept under the influence for days, even weeks. It meant higher doses, the close-up view of a syringe becoming a symbol of the ever-increasing danger, and crucially, it meant less oversight. The very committees meant to ensure ethical conduct were sidelined, their offices left empty. The project had not just crossed a line, it had obliterated it. A red warning light was flashing, but no one was there to see it, or rather, no one with the power to stop it chose to see it. It was around this time that the record started to become incomplete. People began to disappear, not just from the facilities, but from the paperwork. Their files would vanish from the cabinets, leaving empty slots where a name and a history used to be. It was a clear sign that something had gone terribly wrong. A walk down the project's corridors now felt different. The shadows seemed longer, the silence heavier. A dark and irreversible path had been taken, and the consequences were only just beginning to surface. The full, horrifying truth of these experiments would eventually be exposed, revealing a chapter in scientific history that serves as a permanent warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the fragility of human morality. Then came the incident that changed everything. An emergency siren wailed, not for a drill, but for a life lost. A subject in the McCulture program was dead. The official story had to be crafted immediately. Before the truth could escape, autopsy reports were meticulously altered, key details redacted, and conclusions rewritten. The final, stamped document declared the cause of death as natural. But it wasn't. This was a lie, a deliberate fabrication to protect the program from scrutiny. Inside the agency, the carefully constructed facade began to crack. Panic set in. This wasn't just a failed experiment. It was a potential homicide with the CIA's fingerprints all over it. The hushed whispers in the hallways turned into heated, frantic arguments behind closed doors. Lawyers were swiftly brought in, not to find justice, but to contain the fallout. A flurry of legal documents were drafted, focused on one thing: damage control. Entire archives of files were reclassified, buried under new layers of secrecy, and locked away in secure vaults, far from any prying eyes. The few people who knew what really happened, the witnesses to the tragedy, were given stern warnings. They were to stay silent, to forget what they saw, to never speak of it to anyone. The family of the deceased was handed a vague, impersonal letter, offering condolences, but no real explanation. There was no apology, no press conference, no admission of wrongdoing. Just a closed door and an empty podium, symbols of an institution closing ranks. Internally, the very foundation of the agency was shaken. Trust, once the bedrock of their operations, completely collapsed. The shared secret became a poison, turning colleagues against each other. Some officials, horrified by what had happened, slammed their fists on desks, demanding the program be shut down immediately. They argued that a line had been crossed, a point of no return. But others, the true believers or those too deeply entrenched, wanted to continue. They argued for more caution, more secrecy, whispering in shadowy corners about how to keep the project alive. Hidden from both the public and their own internal dissenters, the debate raged on. But one reality became undeniable. The risk was now far too great. It wasn't just an ethical problem anymore, though the moral dilemma was staggering. It had become a political powder keg. The specter of exposure loomed large. They could almost see the future headlines, the congressional hearings, the public outrage. And exposed wouldn't just destroy individual careers. It could shatter the credibility of the entire Central Intelligence Agency. The iconic seal of the agency, once a symbol of strength and security, now seemed fragile, on the verge of cracking. The potential for a scandal of this magnitude could cripple their ability to operate for decades. Faced with an untenable situation, a decision was finally made at the highest levels. An executive order was drafted, its language cold and final. The project, once seen as a key to national security, was now a catastrophic liability. A heavy red stamp descended upon the final document, its ink bleeding into the paper, spelling out a single word: terminated. MKUltra was officially over, but the cover-up, the lies, and the haunting questions left in its wake were just beginning. The end of the project was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a long, dark shadow that would stretch for decades, a chilling reminder of how far a secret agency was willing to go in the name of control. The project was officially shut down, filed away, and marked as closed. But closure didn't mean exposure. Far from it. While the program was terminated, the truth was locked away in a vault. Far from public view, the order came down, destroyed the records. Mountains of paper detailing years of unethical experiments were fed into shredders, turned into confetti, their secrets seemingly lost forever. What wasn't destroyed was hidden, tucked away in deep archives, buried under layers of bureaucracy and classification waiting to be forgotten. Only fragments survived, torn documents, incomplete notes, whispers in the hallways for years. That's all there was. Silence. Then, the leaks began. A brave whistleblower, a silhouette in the shadows, decided the world needed to know. The trickle of information became a flood, and soon, Congress was forced to act. They demanded answers. Hearings were convened. Officials were called to testify. The pressure was immense. In response, the CIA issued a carefully worded press statement. They admitted to mistakes. They talked about errors in judgment and overzealous techniques. It was a masterclass in public relations, admitting just enough to seem transparent while revealing almost nothing. They skillfully avoided full accountability when pressed for details. Their responses were evasive. Wrapped in the language of national security, the public got a carefully curated story, not the whole truth, and the consequences for those involved. There were none. Not a single person went to prison. No one was held criminally responsible for the years of abuse and illegal experimentation. The architects of the program retired with full pensions. The perpetrators walked free. For the victims, the men, women, and families whose lives were shattered, there was little justice to be found. The courtrooms remained empty, their pleas for accountability largely unheard. The government offered apologies, but apologies don't heal decades of trauma, even today. So many years later, crucial details remain classified. Documents are released with entire pages blacked out, redacted into oblivion. The full scope of the project, the names of all the victims, the extent of the collaboration, we may never know the complete story. So yes, the project officially no longer exists. The file is closed, but its impact, its dark legacy, is very much alive. It's a ghost that haunts the halls of the intelligence community. The project fundamentally changed how these agencies operate. It set new, terrifying precedents. It stretched the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in the name of national security. And we have to be clear about something. This wasn't some rogue operation, a few bad apples acting alone. This was a program approved at the highest levels of government. It was funded, sanctioned, and protected by people in positions of immense power. It only stopped when the risk of public exposure became too great, when the potential for scandal outweighed the perceived benefits. The light was getting too bright, and they had to shut it down before they were all caught in its glare. The project was shut down, the folder was closed, but the questions remain. How could this happen? What was it all for? And most importantly, could it happen again? This is the story of a CIA project that was never meant to be known, a chapter of history that was supposed to be erased. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories they do want you to hear.